The clock on the nightstand glowed, 1:35 a.m., its red digits cutting through the dim haze of Nate Iron Gouvea's motel room like a warning flare. He was sprawled on the sagging bed, the faint rumble of distant traffic seeping through the thin walls, when his phone shattered the silence. It buzzed once, twice, then erupted into a shrill ring that yanked him upright. The screen lit up with a name he hadn't seen in months. Jade, his daughter. The one he'd walked away from to keep the shadows of his past from touching her. He fumbled for the phone, heart slamming against his ribs like a piston. "Jade? Kid, what's wrong?" His voice was gravel, rough from years of desert winds and unspoken regrets. A gasp, then a sob that twisted like a knife. "Dad, please." Abasement. Her words fractured, muffled by what sounded like a door slamming somewhere far off. "He locked me in. Stepfather. Won't let me out. Hurry." The line crackled, her breathing ragged, and then nothing. Just static, hanging in the air like smoke from a backfired engine. Nate stared at the phone, the world narrowing to that single frozen moment. Jade. His Jade. The girl with his eyes and her mother's fire, trapped in some hell he thought he'd shielded her from. Memories flooded in, the day he'd knelt by her bed after her mom's funeral, promising he'd always come back. No matter what, kid, iron don't break. But life had a way of rusting even the strongest oaths. He'd hit the road with the Iron Promise crew, chasing ghosts of old wars, leaving her with a stepdad who promised stability but delivered chains. Nate didn't grab his leather jacket, didn't strap on his knife or call the brothers. He bolted for the door in his faded t-shirt and jeans, boots thudding against the cracked linoleum. The night air hit him like a slap, cool laced with the metallic tang of impending rain, as he swung a leg over his Harley, the beast growling to life under him. Keys in the ignition, throttle twisted, and he was gone. Tires chewing up the empty highway at 1:37 a.m. The wind whipped his face, stinging like accusations, as the motel's neon sign faded in the rear view. The road to her town was a black ribbon unspooling through the dark, flanked by skeletal Joshua trees that clawed at the stars. Nate's mind raced faster than the bike, piecing together fragments. Jade was 16 now, tough on the outside like him, but fragile where it counted. The stepfather, Mark, some desk jockey type with a smile too wide and eyes too cold, had married her mom right after Nate split. Stability, he'd called it. But whispers from old contacts hinted at darker undercurrents. Arguments that echoed through thin walls. Jade pulling away, her calls growing shorter until they stopped. Nate had told himself it was for the best. Let her have a normal life. But normal didn't lock girls in basements. Headlights sliced the void, illuminating faded billboards for diners long closed and motels promising rest he couldn't afford. The engine's roar drowned out the doubts, but not the guilt. What kind of father leaves a promise hanging? The Iron Promise MC wasn't just a club. It was his chosen family, forged in the fires of forgotten battles. Veterans like him, bound by oaths that outlasted blood. They'd pulled him from the abyss after the war, after the IED that took his squad and left him with scars that mapped his soul. But Jade, she was the one promise he'd nearly broken. Miles blurred into a countdown. Nate's grip tightened on the handlebars, knuckles whitening. The first drops of rain speckled the windshield of passing semis, but he pushed harder, the bike leaning into curves like an old friend, sensing the urgency. Flashes of her face, toddler Jade on his shoulders, laughing as they rode the dunes. The tear-streaked goodbye when he deployed, her tiny hand clutching his dog tags. "Come back, Daddy Iron." He had, but not soon enough for her mom. Cancer didn't wait for heroes. By 2:15 a.m., the outskirts of Willow Creek materialized. Ramshackle houses huddled against the hills, streetlights flickering like dying embers. Nate eased off the throttle as he entered the subdivision, the Harley's growl softening to a predatory purr. Jade's street was quiet, Too quiet, the kind of silence that hides screams. He killed the engine a block away, coasting to a stop under the shadow of a gnarled oak. The house loomed at the end of the cul-de-sac, a two-story colonial with peeling paint and a porch light buzzing faintly. No cars in the drive except Mark's sedan, its hood still warm under his palm. Nate approached on foot, boots silent on the dew-slick grass. The air smelled of wet earth and something sharper, fear maybe, or the faint ozone of tension. He circled to the side, ears straining for any sound. A basement window, half buried in the foundation, caught his eye, grimy glass, a sliver of light leaking through. He crouched, peering in. Darkness mostly, but there, a shape huddled in the corner, knees drawn up, phone clutched like a lifeline. Jade. His blood turned to ice, then fire. No rage, not yet, just a cold certainty settling in his bones. This wasn't about fists or fury, it was about the promise. He tapped the glass lightly 3 times, the signal they'd used as kids. Her head jerked up, eyes wide in the gloom. Relief washed over her face, mingled with terror. "Dad?" The whisper barely carried, but it hit him like thunder. "Hold on, kid, I'm here!" He scanned the yard. No cameras, no neighbors stirring. The back door was his best shot. He moved like a shadow, testing the knob. Locked. A quick jimmy with a credit card from his wallet, and it gave way with a soft click. Inside, the house was a tomb. Stale air, thick with the scent of takeout and neglect. Stairs creaked under his weight as he descended, each step a deliberate placement, avoiding the loose boards he remembered from visits long past. The basement door at the bottom was sturdy oak, bolted from the outside. He heard her now, soft whimpers, the rustle of chains. No, just the echo of her fear. Nate's hand hovered over the bolt, but voices upstairs froze him. Mark's, slurred with booze or sleep. "Stay put, you little ingrate, this is for your own good." Nate's jaw clenched, muscles coiling like springs. Not yet. He slid the bolt free, easing the door open inch by inch. Jade scrambled toward him, throwing herself into his arms. She was thinner than he remembered, bruises shadowing her arms, marks of control, not accident. "He said you'd never come, said you forgot." "Never, kid. Iron don't forget." He held her close, the warmth of her against his chest a balm and a brand, but footsteps thundered above, heavy and approaching. The real fight wasn't breaking her out. It was facing the web of silence that had let this fester, the neighbors who looked away, the authorities who dismissed her pleas as teenage drama. Willow Creek had its own shadows, corruption woven into the fabric of small-town justice. As Mark's bellow echoed down the stairs, "What the hell?" Nate guided Jade behind him, positioning her toward the open window. The night outside beckoned, a promise of road and redemption. But dawn was hours away, and the crew would need to ride for this one. One call, and the iron promise would answer. For her, for the oath that bound them all. Nate's arm wrapped around Jade like a shield, her small frame trembling against his side as they backed toward the basement window. The air down here was thick, cloying with the musty scent of damp concrete and forgotten laundry, undercut by the sharp tang of her fear sweat. Mark's footsteps pounded the stairs above, each one a drumbeat echoing Nate's rising pulse. No time for subtlety now. He scooped Jade up, her legs wrapping instinctively around his waist, and hoisted her toward the narrow sill. "Out, kid, through the window, run to the oak tree, hide there till I call." She hesitated, eyes darting to the closing door at the top of the stairs. "Dad, he's crazy. He won't stop." Iron stops for no one but family. His voice was low, steady, the kind that cut through chaos like a knife through fog. With a gentle push, she scrambled out, her sneakers scraping the exterior wall before vanishing into the night. Nate turned just as the basement door flew open, Mark's silhouette filling the frame like a storm cloud. The stepfather was a hulking figure in rumpled pajamas. His face flushed red under the harsh glow of the single bulb swinging overhead. Beer belly straining against his shirt, eyes wild with a mix of rage and surprise. You? What the hell are you doing here? Mark's voice boomed, slurring at the edges, but there was a flicker of calculation in his glare. The look of a man who'd built his life on control, not confrontation. Nate stood his ground at the base of the stairs, fists loose at his sides, the faded tattoos on his forearms, a coiled serpent and the iron promise emblem, catching the light like warnings. He didn't advance, didn't raise his voice. Years on the road with the crew had taught him that true power wasn't in the swing, it was in the stand. Jade called. Said you locked her down here. We're leaving, now. Mark laughed, a bark that echoed off the walls, descending 2 steps with deliberate slowness. The wood groaned under his weight, and Nate caught the faint whiff of whiskey on the air. Leaving? This is my house, biker trash. You abandoned her years ago. Left her with me to clean up your mess. She's mine now, troublemaker, always stirring up drama. School called last week. She's been skipping. Lying. This? He jabbed a thick finger toward the empty corner where Jade had been. This is discipline. You got no right. Nate's jaw tightened, memories surging like exhaust from a revving engine. Jade at 8, building sandcastles on the beach, her laughter mingling with the crash of waves, the hollow echo of her voice on the phone after her mom's funeral, begging him not to go. He'd promised then, under the sterile lights of the hospital, that he'd protect her fire. But war had called, then the club, and promises had rusted in the desert heat. Mark's words stung because they carried a sliver of truth. He'd been absent, letting this man weave his web. But absence wasn't abandonment, it was survival, shielding her from the shadows that still hunted him from old battles. Discipline don't come with locks and bruises, Nate said evenly, his eyes locking onto Mark's. The basement felt smaller now, the walls pressing in like the confines of a courtroom he'd never trusted. Willow Creek's sheriff was Mark's golf buddy, the kind of small-town alliance that buried complaints under piles of paperwork. Jade had whispered about it once, in a rare call. Teachers turning a blind eye, neighbors muttering about family matters. Corruption here wasn't flashy, it was the slow rot of indifference, where justice bent for the loudest voice. Mark sneered, taking another step down, his hand dipping toward his pocket. Keys, maybe a phone. You think you can just waltz in? I'll call the cops. Trespassing, theft of a minor. You'll be in cuffs before dawn. But Nate didn't flinch. Instead, he pulled his own phone from his jeans, thumb hovering over the screen. One tap, and the iron promise would ignite. Brothers scattered across 3 states. Jax, with his welding torch and unyielding code. Lena, the nurse who'd patched more souls than wounds. Old Rook from the war, who'd sworn the same oath in a foxhole under fire. They weren't outlaws. They were keepers of forgotten promises, riders who turned up when blood ties failed. Call 'em, but know this, Jade's out, and if your cops show, they'll meet more than me. The bluff hung in the air, thick as the humidity seeping through the walls. Mark paused, uncertainty cracking his bluster. Outside, a distant rumble stirred, the first hint of thunder rolling in from the hills. Or maybe Nate's imagination fueling the storm. He edged toward the stairs, keeping Mark in his sights, every sense attuned, the creak of floorboards above, the soft patter of rain starting on the foundation, the faint glow of Jade's phone light flickering from the yard like a beacon. You don't get it, Mark growled, blocking the way fully now, his bulk a barricade. This town's mine, felt like disappearing. The room fell silent, the weight of her words amplifying the creak of settling beams, the distant rush of the creek like a gathering storm. Jade stepped closer, her presence a quiet anchor amid the maps and shadows. Use it, all of it. I want them to hear, not just you guys, but everyone who looked away. Her chin lifted, echoing the unyielding spirit Nate saw in her mother's eyes during those final hospital vigils, when promises were all that held back the dark. Rook clasped Nate's shoulder, the grip a transference of foxhole trust. Oath's the compass. We ride clean. Deliver the package to that journalist contact Lena knows. No direct hits on Mark yet. Let the light do the work. His eyes, weathered by losses that words couldn't mend, held the club's core. Redemption through restraint, justice as the long haul, not the quick burn. As dusk deepened, painting the mill in bruised purples, they mobilized. Lena bundled the files into a waterproof satchel, Jax rigging a secure upload to an off-grid server. Nate and Jade shared a moment by the creek's edge, water gurgling over stones, slick with twilight's gloss, the air cooling to carry hints of wild mint. "Proud of you, kid," he murmured, the words rough but true. "This promise? It's ours now." She hugged him, brief and fierce, the bond sealing like weld on steel. But as engines revved, Harleys and truck in low-throated chorus, a new rumble intruded. Headlights sweeping the tree line, two sets closing fast. Deputies, or worse, Mark's reinforcements, the web contracting. Nate's hand went to the throttle, the night alive with the scent of pine sap, an impending clash. The ethical storm broke. Truth's ride demanded they accelerate, chosen family united, into the gathering dark where dawn's justice waited to ignite. The headlights pierced the twilight like accusatory fingers, slicing through the mill's encroaching shadows and painting the creek's edge in harsh white. Nate's hand froze on the throttle, the Harley's engine idling with a low, vibrating hum that resonated through his bones, syncing with the rapid thump of his heart. The air hung heavy with the sharp tang of wet earth and pine resin, the creek's murmur now drowned by the growl of approaching engines. Two cruisers, unmarked but unmistakable in their deliberate crawl, tires crunching gravel like teeth on bone. Jax killed his truck's lights, motioning the crew into the mill's deeper gloom, while Rook's hand dipped toward the shadows at his belt. Not for a weapon, but a flare, the club's signal for measured retreat. "Webb's closing," Rook whispered, his breath warm against the chill dusk, eyes scanning the tree line where branches swayed like wary sentinels. Inside, Lena bundled the satchel tighter, her movements fluid and unhurried, the zipper's rasp a counterpoint to the rising tension. Jade pressed close to Nate, her fingers digging into his arm, the notebook's edges crinkling under her grip. The evidence burned in his pocket, the tape, the docs, a moral incendiary ready to ignite without a single spark of violence. This was the crux. The Iron Promise's oath tested not in fire, but in the unyielding light of exposure, where corruption crumbled under its own weight. The cruisers halted at the mill's perimeter, doors creaking open to spill deputies into the fading light. Three figures, silhouettes bulked by vests and badges, flashlights sweeping arcs that danced across rusted beams. "Iron Promise? We know you're in there," one called, voice amplified by the night's acoustics, laced with the false authority of small-town edicts. Hargrove's deputy, the one Jax had tailed, stepped forward, his boot splashing in a puddle, sending ripples that mirrored the ethical waves crashing in Nate's mind. Mark's influence pulsed here, the web strands pulling taut. Paint them as threats, bury the truth in procedural fog, let indifference claim another innocent. Nate stepped from the shadows, hands visible and empty, the sun's last amber rays gilding his tattoos like badges of honor earned in forgotten sands. Jade hovered behind, her breath shallow, but her stance firm. No longer the huddled shape in a basement, but a spark in the gathering dark. "We're not hiding," Nate said, his tone even, carrying over the creek's rush like a vow renewed. "But we're not running either. Got something for your boss, truth that don't bend." The deputy advanced, flashlight beam pinning Nate's face, the glare stinging like salt in old wounds. His partners flanked, radios crackling with static whispers. Hargrove's orders, no doubt, to contain and discredit. The air thickened with the scent of gun oil and damp leather, tension coiling like the serpent inked on Nate's skin. Memories surged, Jade's first bike ride, her laughter echoing over dunes, The sterile hospital hush where he'd promised her mother he'd shield their girl. That oath had rusted in absence, but the iron promise had polished it anew, brothers and sisters chosen in the forge of loss, turning personal redemption into collective justice. Jax emerged beside him, satchel in hand, his welder's gaze steady. Public records, audio logs, Mark's discipline tied to your sheriff's favors. We hand it over clean, or it goes wide. Rook and Lena positioned at the flanks, a silent phalanx, their presence a reminder that loyalty wasn't chains, but wings, lifting the vulnerable when systems failed. The lead deputy hesitated, beam wavering, the flicker revealing uncertainty in his eyes. Willow Creek's rot wasn't invincible. It thrived on unchallenged silence, but here, under the mill's looming eaves, that silence shattered. "Step aside," he barked, but the edge dulled, authority cracking like thin ice. Nate held the recorder aloft, playing the tape's opening. Jade's voice, clear and resonant. It started small, but the locks, they made me disappear. The words hung, amplified by the open air, seeping into the deputy's radios, broadcasting unintended. One shifted, exchanging glances with his partner, the web's strands fraying in real time. This goes to Hargrove," the lead muttered. But his hand lowered the light, the fight ebbing like the creek's receding flow. No cuffs, no charges, just a standoff suspended in moral gravity, where truth's weight pulled heavier than any badge. Mark's sedan idled unseen on the access road, headlights off, but Nate sensed him watching, the puppeteer glimpsed in the strings. As the deputies conferred, murmuring into their units, Lena stepped forward, her nurses calm a balm. "Check the files. Patterns of ignored calls, buried reports. This town's justice bent for too long." The crew stood, united, engines cooling in the background, the night's chill settling like dew on their resolve. Jade met Nate's eyes, a nod passing between them, her fire rekindled, the promise fulfilled not in escape, but in standing ground. Minutes stretched, the standoff resolving in reluctant retreat, the deputies withdrawing, satchel confiscated but copies already uploaded, seeds of exposure sown in digital soil. Hargrove's web quivered, the first tremors of unraveling. By midnight, as the crew rode out under a star-pricked sky, the air fresh with creek mist and Victory's quiet scent, news alerts buzzed, anonymous leaks hitting local feeds. Mark's name linked to the sheriffs in headlines that demanded reckoning. Back at Blackridge's safe house, fire crackling anew, Jade sat with the crew, her laughter tentative but real, weaving into tales of roads ahead. Nate watched, the weight lifting like exhaust in the wind. Redemption not solitary, but shared. The Iron Promise's legacy etched in lives mended. Willow Creek would face its dawn. Investigations launched, oaths broken, exposed, justice poetic in its patient grind. Promises survived, loyalty bound them, and in the chosen family's circle, honor endured, a silent roar against the cynical night. Thank you for riding this journey with us. If these stories of unbreakable promises and quiet courage resonate, hit that subscribe button and join the Iron Promise family. Your support keeps the tales rolling, wherever the road takes you.